is there an existential threat to people's jobs if they do not think like a producer?
You don't have to think like a producer in order to maintain your job. You need to think like a consumer. You run a risk of no longer being needed if your counterparts are producing 4 times your speed now. If you're getting replaced by AI, you're using the tools in a way to replace you by AI. If you're using AI to supercharge you, then you can't get replaced by it. We're here to use AI to make us faster. We're not here to use AI to replace us.
Hello, Aliyah. How you doing?
I'm doing good, you?
Good, 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 good. So really excited to have you on here. And I know we've been having lots and lots of conversations. So I'm really super excited to get into really the conversation today. One, I love the fact that I'm talking to someone who really is a practitioner, an AI practitioner who uses AI, builds tools with AI. And, I don't want to get into so much of what's out there and what's not. I want to focus really more on what can we do. But I think it's really exciting to see that there are people who are actually building and creating things. So it's always a breath of fresh air when I have someone on the podcast who is building and creating and making stuff happen. So excited to have you on here.
So, my name is Aliyah Gibbs. I am an AI adoption specialist as well as an AI engineer. I am the CEO and founder of the company Aliyah's Intelligence, where I teach individuals and organizations how to leverage artificial intelligence responsibly while maintaining their critical thinking skills as well as creativity. So that's pretty much what I do. I have the pleasure of traveling across the entire country, training people in artificial intelligence, serving as AI subject matter experts for hackathons, and representing companies at AI summits and AI conferences. So it's pretty exciting.
That is awesome. That's awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's start with the definition of artificial intelligence, because I guess I saw that on your page and I was like, okay, you know what? I need to have her on. I need to have her on
Right.
here because there's really a need to redefine what artificial intelligence is for people. So why don't you share with our audience what is artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so what I always tell people, like the most basic term of artificial intelligence, it literally refers to a computer mimicking how the human brain functions. Like that's the most
Yep.
basic
Yep.
definition straight out of Merriam-Webster that I can give you when it comes to AI.
So I guess the next question is then what's AI not? What is AI?
So I would say, because it's more so not what it is, but AI isn't just generative AI, right? AI is not
Exactly.
ChatGPT, right? I think a lot of people are confusing the two. Generative AI is a component within artificial intelligence. It combines
Exactly.
multiple different AI concepts in order to produce generative AI, right? It's not necessarily a study per se. I would say it's multiple studies together: reinforcement learning, natural language processing, deep learning, as well as machine learning. It kind of uses all of the core AI components in order to, I guess, create generative AI tools.
Awesome. So guys, this is not coming from me. This is coming from Aliyah. So uh what does it really mean to use this tool as a consumer versus, or use these tools as a consumer versus using it as a producer?
So, really, I would say the core difference between being a consumer of the tool, right? The person who consumes the tool is the person who uses the tool, right? So, it's the person who has either the free account or the pro account or whatever type of membership, right? And you go in and you write your fun prompts and you get your cool little outputs. Versus the producer of the tool, they're the ones that could literally open up the tool, dig into the code, they can make updates, they could actually modify things, right? They're the ones designing the tool for the consumer to use. So
Right,
that to
right,
me is the difference between the two.
right. So is there any benefit between the being a producer versus being a consumer?
I would say It's more so personal preference. You definitely do not have to be a producer, right? If you have no technical background, no one is expecting you to be a producer of anything. But I would say the benefit is to be a consumer because you need to learn how to use these tools, right? A lot of companies are investing millions of dollars into generative AI. So we need more consumers and not necessarily more producers. Like, yes, we do need more producers, but the key isn't to turn everyone into an AI engineer. That's not the focus. We don't need more AI engineers. We do, but we don't. Like, you don't have to go from being a marketing expert to an AI engineer. That's not what we're here for. We need you to figure out how you can combine marketing with artificial intelligence in order to speed up the marketing industry. We're not needing you to convert yourself to an AI engineer. That's what we more so need.
Okay. Okay. So you're advocating more that people need to plug in to the consumer aspect of AI. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It depends on how far you want to go with it, right? You're not forced, right? I would say consumer is the first step. Now, if you have this desire to contribute to the field technically, right, you want to really dig deep and learn about how AI works, then cool, you could be a producer, but it's not necessary in order to stay afloat
I
in the
see.
new digital age.
I see. I see. So is there an existential threat to their jobs or to people's jobs if they do not think like a producer?
You don't have to think like a producer in order to maintain your job. You need to think like a consumer, I would say, right? Like if you just refuse to use this product and everyone around you is producing a lot
Use it.
quicker as a result of the product, right? You run a risk of no longer being needed if your counterparts are producing 4 times your speed now because they're using the tools.
What if then your use of the tools replaces you?
Then that means you're not using the tools responsibly. Right? That's how I feel. If you're getting replaced by AI, you're using the tools in a way to replace you by AI. If you're using AI to supercharge you, then you can't get replaced by it, right? We're here to use AI to make us faster. We're not here to use AI to replace us. And I feel as though the way you're replacing yourself with AI is because you're just copying and pasting whatever the tool produces. You're not thinking about the output. You don't understand how the tool works and you're just a copy and paster is what I call them. Versus
Hmm.
if you're using
Well,
AI as from a critical thinker's perspective, and if you have a strong background in what's going on with the tool, right, the first thing you're going to do differently is you're going to review your output, number one, because you're aware that artificial intelligence will and can make mistakes. And then after you've reviewed your output, you might iterate on the process because you're not a copy and paster. So you understand that 9 times out of 10, it's going to take a couple of prompts before you get your desired output. So it's more so you working with artificial intelligence to produce your out versus you just using AI and not thinking when you use it.
exactly. So how do people start, using AI from the vantage point that gives them the opportunity to keep their roles or keep their jobs?
A way that you could use it is number one, do research and see like how are my industries currently using artificial intelligence, right? The first step is the
Mhm.
research. Like, or what I did, right? I'm in engineering. I needed to put an AI project together. I didn't know how AI contributed to my industry. So I did a research and I asked, like, hey, how can AI be used in blank industry? And he gave me a million different ways. And then, cool, guess what? One of those ways I sat on a team that did exactly that stuff. That I was like, okay, cool. I could potentially apply AI to my direct program. And I put a project proposal together based off of that quick research search and seeing how you can leverage AI in your industry and then go from there.
Incredible. Incredible. So for those who might be listening and they are basically subject matter experts in a specific field or a specific space, and they want to leverage AI to basically push whatever they're doing forward in that specific space. What are some of the initial things that you think they can do in terms of working with some of those generative AI tools to be able to start really thinking like this, or start really putting some of what you're sharing to work?
So I would say the first thing is start using it to help you do simple tasks, right? I mean, if you can't understand it at the most simplest chat level, you're going to get lost in the sauce when it comes to uploading documents into it, right? So it's like
Yep.
start using it to rewrite your email, right? I'm sure most of us, we send out emails. Who
Hmm.
knows? Some people send out hundreds of emails a day, right? So maybe start with the most simplest use case.
Hmm.
Start with the most redundant tasks that you have that you can't stand, right? Do an audit on your day to day to see, like, okay, what's something that I do multiple times that I could potentially automate, right? And then start from that. So if you find yourself writing a lot of emails, start figuring out, hey, how can I use AI to write emails? Or how can I use AI to do X, Y, and Z? So do an audit on what you do daily and figure out, okay, well, how can I use AI? If you find yourself you're a big brainstormer or you spend a lot of time thinking of ideas, cool, start using AI to brainstorm.
And then from there, now you've identified X number of ways that AI can sort of work within that specific industry or work within your context. How do you, for those who want to take it beyond that, AI is doing their emails now. They want to start doing like automating some of the things that they're doing in their workplace. And how do they get started with that? Any ideas, any suggestions to people?
How to get started with automating AI in their workplace?
So they started with, content and using GPTs and Grok to get to review emails, to send emails and things of that nature. Now they want to move from that to automating certain tasks or creating things that are sort of seamless within their workplace. How do they get up to speed with that?
Well, I would say the first thing is if you're doing this for your job, you need to see what your company's policies are in artificial intelligence, right? Before we even get too far down the line. Because some
Hmm.
companies have very specific limitations on the tools that you can use for their company data. So if you're
Hmm.
doing this for your job, you need to understand what your company's stance is with using generative AI tools. If you have your own internal tools, right, you need to start familiarizing yourself with your company's internal tools. You need to know what those rules are because some companies have it to where you cannot generate or you produce customer facing outputs using generative AI, right?
Hmm.
So you really need to understand what your company's rules are to make sure that you're in
Very good
compliance
point.
with their rules. I would say that's the first step first, right?
Hmm.
Before we even go down the line of automating your work, you have to see what your company's stance is on it and what they have available. Some companies, if they use Microsoft Copilot and they have that AI license with them, you can leverage Power Automate, right? And it directly plugs in with your
To,
Microsoft
yeah,
Office
yeah,
tools.
yeah,
But it
yeah.
just depends on what your company stands and then what tools does your company have available to you. And then based off of that, you could do X, Y, and Z with. So it'll be a little bit difficult for me to tell like step by step just because so many companies have their own individual tools.
Let's abstract it a little bit. So first step is you do your research. Next step, you identify ways that it could work with certain basic tasks. Then once you're done with that, you review your company's policy to identify what works within their context, what doesn't work, what data can you feed into the generative AI, what data can't you feed into the generative AI, what tools can you use, what tools can't you use, and all that good stuff. Then when you're done with that, let's just say hypothetically you're cleared, you have the opportunity to use, I don't want to use GPT because everybody's using it, Copilot or whatever. Microsoft Copilot, let's just go that direction. I could go GCP as well, like Google products and stuff like that. How does an individual go from, hey, here's the task that I'm trying to accomplish, to here's the result that I'm sort of looking to accomplish once they get that clearance? Anything you can share there?
So how can they can take a task and go from, I guess, task to the output?
Output, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say it's just depending on what their task is, for example. I really look at it as the whole point is to use AI as your assistant. It's not, like I said, right? The
Hmm.
way you use it determines if it replaces you or not, right? Do you use it to think for you? Do you use it to replace your decision making? Right? You shouldn't. You should be really just using it to research for you because they're great at doing deep research, especially like when you are working with companies that have sensitive data, you still can potentially leverage external tools for like just general research because more than likely the external tools are going to be better at general research because since your company's tools they are gonna be internal, they're likely not as connected to the internet, like ChatGPT would be, for example, right? So the research that you would get is going to be a little bit more limited compared to the research you can get with ChatGPT because I can directly pull in information from websites using RAG, but
Right.
internal tools usually can't because they're not connected to the internet. That's the whole point of them being internal is that it keeps the data in-house versus with the external tools, it does not keep the data in-house unless you set those permissions. So I would say number one, using the tools for deep research can definitely help you with taking an idea and producing output from it. It really just depends on what your particular use case is
Hmm.
first
Hmm.
before I can walk you through like a step-by-step process.
Yep. Yep. I think no, you're absolutely right. I think it's really once you find that use case, being able to break those use cases into smaller chunks of tasks, and then being able to figure out which of these tools or which of these whatever AI agents, whatever you might call it, and make whatever helps to really connect all of those dots.
Mhm.
But should an individual really be thinking about learning automation? Because the way this thing works is you start out and then you use the tools to essentially figure out how to complete a small task, and then maybe someone at your workplace is already doing the automation, and so now you're in competition with that individual who's doing automation because you don't know how to do automation. So essentially, you become replaceable. Is the mindset that people have in those instances? What do you think about that? And how should an individual in this kind of situation, how do they get ahead of this stuff?
Yeah, so I would say in most places, at least from what I'm witnessing within my corporation, no one is expecting you to set up automations. I would say mainly your automations are for personal use, right? Especially if you do have access to Copilot, they're really your automations that you're setting up. Mainly us as the engineers, we would be creating the automations for people to use. I don't think no one is expecting you to become an AI automations expert. We're not expecting you to know how to go and make or create your Power Automates. It's more like that's your personal preference to set those tools up. We really just want to see you using these tools to get your job done faster, however you choose to use them, whether you want to just create your own knowledge based assistance where you can come in and ask questions off of a 200-page document, right? You might not have the bandwidth to read that document, but you could create a GPT or whatever. And now you can ask questions off of it, right? That's what we're more so looking at. We're looking at you doing maybe analysis with artificial intelligence to where, hey, we have all of this historical data, right? Let's analyze it using AI, right? Let's go off of the data that we've been capturing for 5 years to figure out, like, okay, what could we do better based off of this data? We don't necessarily need people to automate processes. We need you to use AI in order to work faster and in order to stop maybe doing the same mistakes. If you, based off of your historical data, notice that, hey, we've dropped the ball in this category for the past 5 years, right? Okay, now that you've noticed that discrepancy, what problem, like, how are you going to solve that problem so that way going forward, you don't do it? Or let's say you're in the manufacturing industry, right? Based off of your data, a certain part kind of breakdowns after 30 uses, right? Cool. We've noticed that gap, right? So what do we do in order to fix that problem to where maybe it breaks down after 50 times? Or maybe if
Mm,
we know it's going to break down on the 30th time, we already expect that it will, right? It's like, how can we become proactive? So I would say automation is really just one part of it, but it's not the core focus of it. There's just so many other ways that you could leverage AI just outside of automating things.
okay. So I guess, for our guests and for those who are listening, I think the core is what is it that you're doing and how can AI help you optimize it? How can AI help you to make it better? And if you're able to feed all that input into a GPT or a Grok, as long as you're using it within the standards and policies that were defined by your organization, sure. For additional things like learning automation and things of that nature, that's completely separate. If you're thinking about doing any of that, then you really need to be thinking of yourself as some sort of a, I don't know, process engineer, if you will, sort of understands like all the different processes and then sort of figures out which tool needs to be used to be able to get that specific thing done. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and I'm going to start talking more from a producer standpoint because that's kind of what I wanted to really dive deep into in this conversation. And so, you know, thinking about things from a producer's perspective, right? When I think about machine learning in general, I think about data, I think about training, I think about testing. So, training and testing. I think about evaluation, like evaluation of models and things of that nature. And so, some of our audience are core AI engineers, meaning they basically breed, breathe, sorry, not breed, breathe, think. All they do is really
And sleep.
engineering solutions. We
Mm-hmm.
have, I think we have like a pool of over 500 to 1,000 data engineers, and
Really?
all they do is, training models. Oh yeah, training models, all that kind of stuff. And they're in our training program. They're on our WhatsApp group and things of that nature. And so basically what I wanted to really talk about is as an engineer, how has the landscape changed for you? So before now, we used to talk about machine learning from the perspective of linear regression, logistic regression, and things of that nature. Then we moved to deep learning. And then now even after deep learning, you had transfer learning, you had all forms of reinforcement learning, supervised, unsupervised learning, all that good stuff. How has shifted now with generative AI? Is there still any particular importance in, as an engineer, in still being vast in the foundational models that built what it is that we actually know today?
So I would say that with generative AI, right now we are having what millions of users using these tools, right? So I would say, and I believe the new shift is we don't necessarily need people to create brand new models, right? From the ground up. What we need are optimized models, right? Like how can your model optimize with the least amount of digital footprint? I think is the focus because a lot of people are concerned about how generative AI and data centers leverage drinking water in order to cool them down, right? So I would say that's the issue that AI engineers need to focus on tackling. How can we optimize these models? How can we optimize these data centers to use less resources, right? That to me is the new shift is model optimization now, right? We've built up phenomenal large language models. So now let's focus on optimizing them so that way we are not harming the environment as much as we are, because it is an important conversation that needs to be had. And especially with the increase of data centers, we are only going to increase our digital footprint. So, how do we as the engineers mitigate that? It's by optimizing the models. So, I think that's the next step.
For new engineers, for engineers who are just sort of hopping on this bandwagon, how do they begin to prepare themselves to do that, to be individuals that optimize? Also, there's also a data problem that I'm going to get into shortly, but for new engineers, how do they start to really think about optimization? Do they start to mess around with DeepSeek? What should that look like?
Well, if you're a brand new engineer, I'm gonna assume that you don't even have the fundamental skills, or is that correct to assume that?
I think they do. For this ones, for individuals that they have
Okay.
found. also. So
Okay.
they
So if you
understand logistic regression, they know linear
deep
regression,
learning,
they
right? They know
understand
how to
deep
build
learning,
neural
really,
networks.
yeah, neural
Got it.
networks.
Yeah. So then the next step would be that model optimization. It's like, how can you train the model in a way to where it can train, excuse me, I lost my train of thought, but how it can train faster, right? Use less memory. Like these are the things that we want to look at, adding different maybe quantizations to the models, playing around with that, right? Doing research on model optimization because it is out there, right? They do have different things. I think you could potentially, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, because I've done a little bit of model optimization advances for deep learning course. One second. So those are just things that you can look into. They have those type of classes. So I would take those trainings if you already have it and just look at why, like, the compute is costly and reverse engineer the process. Now I think what we do have it to where you can kind of take your models. They can be a little bit like portable now. So like I do know because you have to think about it, right? When we first had the first cell phone, that thing was gigantic. I think it might have, I don't even know if it could really be portable right now. We have iPhones that literally have GPS, everything built in on the phone for you right here. So what, in like 20 years, we came a long way with cell phones. So that's kind of what I expect with artificial intelligence. Like right now we have these big old ugly data centers that require so much compute, but I think within the next 10 to 20 years, they'll be maybe even this small, you know?
Mhm. Another problem that I think needs to be addressed, I'll call it my own personal problem, is basically there are certain areas that can not really access there are certain areas across the world that cannot necessarily access the same type of compute as you and I can. How do we make it accessible
Excuse
in
me.
those areas as well, right? Is something that I think is really critical to really think about. Also, there's this challenge around like lots of the data sets that are being trained on these models are more public data. And so there are individuals who actually have something more proprietary to them in a way, like they could really benefit from keeping it private, training, fine tuning, whatsoever the case may be, using existing models to optimize and make whatsoever they're doing better because a lot of these things are available. So how do you see the landscape of training, fine tuning shifting? Do you think that in the coming years we're going to have more hires in that specific space? Because everybody's saying how AI is taking their jobs. And I actually have engineers in Microsoft and these places that basically are out of jobs because maybe the company is no longer interested in that specific area any longer, and they're shifting gears and things of that nature. How how can they prepare for what's coming? How can
From an
they,
engineering perspective.
from an engineering perspective, yeah,
Is
like how
this
can
more
they?
so software engineering though? I would
Yes,
say. Okay, okay. I just wanted to
yeah,
make sure
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah. It's
so I
software
would say
engineering.
for a software engineer, right? You now need to, this is what I did. It's like everything boils down to research at its core, right? Do research. Go see where the tech trends are headed, right? A lot of companies produce data on where technology is predicted to go in the next 10 plus years. And this happens in every industry. Like, this isn't the first time we've had new advancements in technology that have completely shifted the industry. So that happened when the internet was out. That happened when we got computers, right? This is a reoccurring theme. So as an engineer, it's up to you to be proactive, right? The studies literally 2-3 years ago predicted that AI, cybersecurity, data, and cloud would be the top 4 trends in tech years ago because I've been in my master's for 2 years. So therefore, the data was pointing at that literally 2 to 3 years ago. So the data was already predicting exactly where the ship was going to be, but engineers weren't proactive.
Mhm.
Like, you need to be proactive if you want to have longevity in any field. Like, you waited, they made these predictions, like I said, 3 years ago. Now you're a little late because you weren't proactive, and the only reason I was maybe proactive in it was because I wanted to get a master's degree, and I needed to see, hey, what degree is going to make sense and what degree is going to last me in the next 10 to 15 years. And so because of that research, that's how I was introduced to artificial intelligence. So that's what happened for me. But that's the type of research that you need to be doing in any industry if you want
Absolutely.
to stay ahead.
100%.
And you need to understand where the market is shifting, and they do those analyses all the time. And then on top of that, you should automatically be doing that type of research because you constantly need to make sure that your skills match the current market's need for the skills, right? So these are just things that you as an engineer are responsible for keeping up and to date with. No one needs to be able to hold your hand and take you along and tell you what's going to happen. No, you as the engineer need to do that type of work because that way you tailor all of your continuous knowledge to match what's going on in the world. So it's up to you to stay up to date to where your industry is going. Like your industry's not going to tell you by the time they told you you're late. Like you want to be ahead of the curve.
Yep. Yep. So, guys, are you listening? So, one, it's really very important. It's extremely important to understand the industry trend, where things are going, because if you do not, then basically you're going to shoot yourself in the foot because you're going to get to the destination and then realize you didn't have the keys. So,
Yeah,
I
like
think it's
before,
really key.
why waste your time getting a certification in something if you never even seen if your certification would be valuable in 5 years? That's a
Good point.
waste. Like any type of continuous knowledge that you're going to pursue, you need to make sure it's actually going to be in existence in 5 to 10 years from now.
Mhm.
And so maybe if you're having a hard time as a software engineer finding a job, try getting a cybersecurity, right? Because with the advancements of artificial intelligence, the more we do optimize these models, everything's going to be moving to the cloud.
Mhm.
Like we won't have to have as much in-person data centers. There'll probably be cloud-based data centers at some point. You need to figure out, okay, cool, right? If I know that the industries are going down, because you need data, number one, to power everything. We can't do nothing without data. So maybe you want to go down the data route. Cool. That's in part where you go. You could go down the artificial intelligence route because we need the models, we need the systems to do X, Y, and Z tasks. Or you don't want to code, cool. Guess what? You can go look at how do we protect these intelligent tools, right? Because
Mhm.
cyber is going to be more important. The more cyber risk you have, the more cyber protection that's necessary. So
Mhm.
cool. Now you go looking how can I go down to cyber? What can I do with cybersecurity? Then lastly, once again, I said you need the cloud. If everything's going to be in the cloud, you need cloud practitioners. So see how you could fit into the cloud. It's
Incredible.
like figure out how you can fit into those 4 categories. Which one sparks your interest the most? I didn't pick AI because I knew generative AI was going to blow up in 3 years. I had no clue when I got into AI. I didn't even know what I was going to do with AI. I just looked at those 4 trends and AI just seemed like the most interesting based off of why I like technology. And that's what I went down. But it was like I did the research and then I made the decision based off of, okay, what's the most interesting to me based off of the information that I found. And that's where I put myself.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. So, guys, you're listening. It's really important to really identify what interests you in this entire space, what direction you really are choosing to plug into, and what you're going to do to be able to necessarily get there. And so, my recommendation is one, start doing research. Like Aliyah said, do your research. Understand where you're at right now, where you're trying to go, and what that delta is, and what you really need to be able to do to be able to get there.
Exactly.
So, Aliyah, as we wrap up here, I wanted to start basically asking how can people connect with you? What are some of the things that you're doing? And how can people lock into what you're doing?
Yes, so I'm doing a lot. I am over upskilling people in artificial intelligence. So for those that maybe don't feel as fluent in AI, right? Guess what? I'm here to help you. No one is expecting you to be an expert. And that's what I help do. I help explain artificial intelligence to people responsibly, right? You have a lot of people out here teaching about AI, but have no technical depth in this industry. That's not me. You're learning from an actual instructor who literally gets paid a lot of money to teach about artificial intelligence to over 60,000 people at one company. And I also do that through my own business as well. I'm an instructor for other companies and organizations. I teach Python as well as multiple different programming languages. So you learn about how AI works as well as how to use AI, because we're here to produce AI comprehension skills and not copy and pasters, is what I say. Ever interested in how you can apply artificial intelligence to your business? I'm definitely the person to talk to for that one. And then if you ever want to just learn more about artificial intelligence, I'm here to help with that as well. I'm here to help. One thing I'm leaning into for 2026 is AI assisted coding. So that might be the new niche for software engineers too, is how can you leverage these artificial intelligence tools to produce code quicker? That could be your new industry, right? Is how can you
Mhm.
code and the terminal command lines with a large language model helping you do so. So I'm going to be working on upskilling developers for 2026 with AI assisted coding, which is not vibe coding, right? Vibe coding is coding with vibes, right?
Coding
That's
that, yeah.
low to no code coding. This is for developers who actually know how to code. So this is an entirely different ball game.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Thanks for thanks for that disclaimer. That was important.
Yes, it's not vibe coding. We're not on lovable.dev. No, we are in the coding IDEs and adding generative AI to our IDEs and
Yeah.
coding.
Encoding, like hitting Django up using the MVC framework, building the
That's what
stuff out.
I'm going to be teaching, that type of stuff.
Incredible, incredible. Thank you so much, Aliyah, for coming out. Looking forward to having more conversations with you. I wanted to start the conversation out really understanding more or helping our audience understand more around the difference between a consumer and a producer. The consumer side is pretty good, and lots of people are jumping on that ship and trying to really learn, which is great. Using it as a tool to optimize work is extremely important. And then we have the producer side of things, which I think it would be great to see more producers as well that create tools and build tools for the next generation of generative AI products or whatever the case may be or what that would look like.
We want more producers of AI, but I think we also need more data producers as well.
True. Good point. That is a very, very critical, extremely critical piece of that whole pipeline itself, because from what I'm seeing, it looks like what we have currently is plateaued, and there's really need to start really thinking about how we continue to generate more data.
More
And
diverse data.
I wasn't gonna say, but you put it out of my mouth. Yes, I think seeing that, like, I'm literally having another conversation in a couple minutes from now around these exact same subjects we're talking about. And that's really how do we start having more diverse data? And I like to use the example of my mom who comes to visit me and then basically tries to play her favorite song on Alexa and she can't find her accent on, on Alexa. I like to use those as examples. This is one small example. There are multiple examples, and so I think that's going to be an interesting follow-up conversation to have around data, to have around, like, how do people build pipelines? We have real engineers, like folks that train models, use PyTorch, like working really, really hard on a day-to-day basis. They're on crew.ai, they are building agents, things of that nature. And so it would be really nice to have you back to have some conversations along those lines.
Yeah. Cause
Please
it's
follow
like,
Aliyah.
yeah.
You're going to say something. Sorry, I want you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say your product is only as good as the data that you have, right? I mean, if you
Mhm.
got a whole bunch of biased data in your product, you're going to produce biased results. So
Exactly. There's also another piece on governance that you and I are having a separate conversation around as well. And so I think there's just a whole lot of conversation here to be had, to be heard. But I think we're going to follow up on this and just keep the conversation going. So Thanks again. You didn't drop your Instagram. How can people reach you on Instagram?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Aliyahs_intelligence. So that is ALIYAHS_intelligence. I hope everyone on this podcast can spell intelligence. So that's it. If you want to find me on LinkedIn as well, that's another platform that I'm very actively on. It's Aliyah B. Gibbs, I think. It's ALIYAH, then B. Gibbs. Honestly, if you Google me, you'll find me on every platform.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks again, Aliyah. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.